So when the schos of the Tilim, we should see Hashem miracles in Eretz Yisrael, bring an end to the war, and all the brachas that come along with it, with the hostages and the soldiers, and even the whole world should be safe, and it should happen taken from Yad Mamash. Pay chapter 82. It's number 2 on the sheet. Mizmor Yosef. Elohim Nitzav Ba'adas El Bekerev Elohim Yishbet. Ad Mosai Tishbetu Ovel Ufnei Rishoyim Tisu Selo. Shiftu Dol V'Yosem Oni V'Rosh Atzdiku. Paltu Dal V'Evyim Miyad Rishoyim Atzilu. Le'yodu v'le'yavinu B'chashecha Yisalochu. Yimoitu Kol Moizdei Oretz. Ani Omarti Elohim Atem. Uvnei Elyon Kulchem. Ochen Ka'odem Temusun V'kachad Asorim Tipelu. Kuma Elohim Shavta Haaretz Kiata Simcha B'chol HaGoyim. It's tzedakah. You can take a coin and put it into the pushka. So we started this part, but we didn't go very far. This was the second part. It's a page. It's no page numbers here. So it's chapter 9, whatever one you call it, division 9, part 9, where it says the need to shout out to Hashem. We want Mashiach now. In Hebrew, Ad Mosai. So on page 1 of that section, that's a better word, section 9. On page 1 of that section, we had like 10 questions that people raised about this. And it's all about, why do we have to say Ad Masai? Why is it important? Why do we say it loud? Why do we have to say it so often? So last week when we spoke about this, we explained this point that why is the feeling that Mashiach doesn't come? It's like its life is unbearable. It's just another few mitzvahs. That now we have so many mitzvahs, and Mashiach comes to have more mitzvahs. Why is it made to feel as if we can't continue? So we explained that it has to do not with just Mashiach, it has to do with our whole understanding of Yiddishkeit. What is Torah and mitzvahs all about? What is our relationship with Hashem all about? So many people see the relationship with Hashem is the creator of the world, and He's giving us instructions how to live. And if we follow His instructions, we'll have a good life. I remember somebody once arguing with me that I want to be independent, I want to do what I want. And I gave him a mashal. I said, imagine you go to a store and you buy a computer. You go to a store and you buy a very expensive coat. And you open up the box, and inside there's a piece of paper with instructions, big, black, bold letters. And it says, don't wash this coat in hot water. Do not. And the person says, are you kidding? I paid $4,000 for this coat, and he's going to tell me what to do? If I want to put it in hot water, I'll put it in hot water. He can't tell me what to do. This computer, I shouldn't do this, and I shouldn't touch that, and I shouldn't move the other thing. It's my thing. It's a silly thought, because the person is not here to control you. The person is the one who manufactured the coat, and that one manufactured the computer. And they know what's good and what's bad. And they're telling you, if you do this, you'll get the most benefits out of this object. If you do that, you're going to ruin something. You're going to destroy something. So basically, this is for your benefit. So that's one way of looking at Torah mitzvahs. If a person gets it, they'll realize, oh, Hashem is not controlling me. He's telling me that it's for my benefit. If I want to get the best out of life, it's by keeping Shabbos and keeping kosher and learning Torah and observing mitzvahs, raising my children this way and doing this and doing that. And that makes me appreciate it so much more. That's one way of understanding it. But the deeper way of understanding it, a much deeper way, is realizing that it's a relationship That's compared in many places in Torah like husband and wife. And basically what's meant to be is that this is a relationship of love, where Hashem's love is there for us, and we love Hashem. And the whole purpose of Torah mitzvahs, these are different ways to either reinforce that love, to express that love. And every mitzvah we do makes us closer to Hashem. And if you love Hashem, all you want to do is be close to Him and embrace Him and be together with Him and so on. The definition of Golus, of course, Golus is a time where we're suffering and we're being persecuted by other nations, and there's a lot of things we are restricted, we can't do, even mitzvahs, we have no Beis Hamikdash, but these are the details. The essence of Golus is that Hashem is hidden from us, and Hashem is distant from us. So like I gave the example the other day, if you remember, with his wife, who the husband said she has money for tuition, and she has a car, and she has money for food, and she has money for clothing, and she even has money to go on a trip if she wants. And she said, I have everything, but I don't have you, because he's never home and he's out with his friends and so on, which means if you understand what marriage is all about, you're missing the point. The main point of the marriage is not here. The main point of the marriage is that we and Hashem should be together. When there was a Beis Hamikdash, when Mashiach will come, Hashem will be revealed. And therefore, if a person says that I'm happy and I can handle things and I can wait when Hashem is ready, I can wait. The only thing I can compare it to is like Chas v'Shalom, what's going on today in Eretz Yisrael, where there are people who have family hostages, and there's nobody that says I can wait. In fact, every time they speak, it's about the fact that to me, every day is like every second is like a year. Every moment is like a year. There's nothing that can come sooner. We can't wait. It has to happen now. That's the way we should be feeling about God. Why are they that way? Because they love the person who's held hostage, whether it's their father or their mother or their son or their daughter or their spouse. Because they love them, they can't bear another moment that they're not together and that they're suffering. So the Shekhinah suffers in Golus, we're suffering in Golus, and we don't have that close relationship with Hashem that we want to. So now but nevertheless, let's go into a few things which show the source of such a thing, that basically Hashem wants us to ask, wants to hear from us that we want Mashiach. And basically what the Rebbe said, this was something new in 1980. It was actually Simchas Torah. And the Rebbe spoke about this and said that now we're in a time that we are deserving of Mashiach, but Hashem wants to hear from us that we want Mashiach. And by all of us expressing how much we want Mashiach, that in itself hastens Mashiach's coming. So let's look at page 1. Different sources that explain this. The first one is, it says like this: the coming of Mashiach is hastened when it is asked for and eagerly anticipated. This Mashiach is coming regardless, but if we ask for it, it'll happen sooner. In this spirit, our sages taught us. When you learn Tanakh, there's stories there with David HaMelech, King David, that a lot of his soldiers fell. In other words, they fell in war. And the Medrash says, the Gemara says, why was it happening? It says the Medrash. Why was it happening? Because they did not demand that the Beis Hamikdash be built. In other words, this was such a punishment for people who did not demand Mashiach, but they never really had a Beis Hamikdash. In other words, they should have been asking that we want the Beis Hamikdash to be built properly. It was never destroyed, but they had a Beis Hamikdash which was more like a temporary tent. And they should have been asking for something which is more like a mansion, a palace for Hashem, which is the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo HaMelech built. So that in our days we had it and it was destroyed. If we don't cry for the Beis Hamikdash and we don't ask Hashem to have compassion for it, so much more accountable. And that's why the righteous men of early generations ordained that we should pray 3 times a day. And in the prayers they inserted the request, a compassionate one, in your abundant mercies restore your divine presence to Tzion and the Beis Hamikdash service to Yerushalayim. And they also requested this in a separate bracha, Boine Yerushalayim, I'll soon show you inside. So we turn the page. Look at page 3. So this is the davening. There's 2 brachas there. One bracha is Yerushalayim, your city, right? And at the bottom it says number 3 in writing. So one bracha is that Yerushalayim, your city, dwell within it, and we want the city to be established. What does it mean established? That the Beis Hamikdash shall be built. So that's one bracha. We're asking for the Beis Hamikdash to be built. The second one is asking for Mashiach to come. Speedily cause the Zion of David, your servant, to flourish and increase his power by your salvation. Zion of David means a descendant of King David, who's Mashiach. So there's 2 brachas, and we say this 3 times a day, asking Hashem to build the Beis Hamikdash, to send us Melech HaMashiach, and so on.
What's the third one?
What?
What's the third one?
The third one, there is a third one, but I didn't speak about it. How do you know I wanted to say a third one? Ruach HaKodesh again, okay. Works until 10 o'clock.
The coffee.
We're going to learn this a little bit later where it says that you didn't have to ask for 3 things. We'll learn this later. One thing is to ask for the Beis Hamikdash to be built, separate prayer. Another thing is we have to ask explicitly, I'll get to in a second, that we want Mashiach to come. And the third thing is that we want Hashem's presence to be revealed in the world. So the bracha before, that's how they explain it. The one that ends off, Mishan and Miftach la Tzadikim, we're asking for Hashem to give the strength to the Tzadikim. They're the ones that reveal Hashem's presence in the world. That's one. The second one is the request for Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash. And the third one, we're asking for Mashiach to come. Yes, Patrick.
I was going to ask, before that, what did we believe in? Like, whose descendants will we be?
Before David HaMelech? I guess there wasn't the concept of Mashiach before David HaMelech. The concept was there. The concept was there in Torah, and one thing we did know is from the tribe of Yehuda. Already in the Chumash it says that from the tribe of Yehuda will come Mashiach. But I guess in that generation they had David HaMelech. They had a king, and it was David HaMelech. And I don't think they were looking forward to. They were in Israel, so they weren't looking. And they had a Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't a Beis Hamikdash. It was called a Mishkan Shiloh. So therefore, I guess at that point they weren't thinking about going out of Galus. They weren't in Galus. They had their own king. So the whole concept was only after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. I mean, there is this concept because it says that one of his descendants was called Chizkiyahu HaMelech. He was a king and he was in Israel, and there was a Beis Hamikdash. And it says Hashem wanted to make him Mashiach. So I don't know, it's a good question. What were they thinking then? So maybe it just meant that Mashiach will come and there'll be no more hostility from other nations. Everyone will be living in peace. The other things will happen because they were already in Israel. They already had their king. If someone would have become a Mashiach, it would mean that the whole world would change. That would be the basic difference. Yeah.
I have a question. So, in the times of David HaMelech, they believed in Mashiach?
That's what Petra was asking.
Oh.
She's asking, what were they thinking about Mashiach and David HaMelech's times?
Because why would they build a Beit HaMikdash then?
No, because what they had was not the ultimate. Don't forget, in those days, the Mishkan traveled. One time it was in Givon, it was in Neuv, it was in Gilgal, here, there. And it didn't have a real permanent home, so to speak. So that's what it says that they should have prayed that they wanted the Beis Hamikdash to have a permanent place. And because they didn't, that's why these things happen.
But did they ask for Mashiach? They asked for Beit HaMikdash.
They asked for Beis Hamikdash, right?
So they didn't really.
No, I don't know. It's a good question. What was the concept of Mashiach in those days? What did they know? What did they think? Were they praying for it? This prayer that we say every day came much later. This came much later. But there's no doubt that there must have been something then but I think the main effect would have been the change in the world, of the nations of the world towards the Yidden.
And between the first and the second, were they praying for the
That's for sure they will bring that, because then it was Gullus.
I think that they knew because of the Nevi'im. They had some sort of concept of Mashiach.
And that was during the times of the first Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah.
All the Nevi'im were during the times of the first Beis Hamikdash. Right. But everything that it says there is about in the future, the end of days. So, but they knew that it could happen at any time. But the question is, what would they? So they knew Mashiach is a descendant of David HaMelech. But I guess the question is, what would they think during David HaMelech's time? I don't know.
Did they know that the first two Beis Hamikdash ones are gonna be permanent? Like they're gonna go into the destroyed at some point?
I don't think the people knew until the Nevi'im told them that if they don't, when it came close to the end, they told them if you don't improve yourself, it's going to be destroyed. Okay. What? Okay, let me answer another question. I think I mentioned to you, the Rebbe insisted that people should say these words, we want Mashiach now, in their language. In Americans say it in English, in Russians should say it in their language, French. What's the point in saying in English? Rebbe always spoke Yiddish or Hebrew. Where does English come into it? So there's on page 4, there's a sikha where the Rebbe explains that. Two things the Rebbe says. Number one, it's important that the rest of the world will know that the Jewish people want Mashiach to come now. And I guess that would have an effect on them. That would inspire them. And the other reason is there are Jews who, for many and various reasons, find this language closer to them than Lashon Kodesh, than the holy language. And since there's no time to wait until such a Jew returns to his true language, because Mashiach is needed now, there's no alternative that we should proclaim and cry out in his language, we want Mashiach now. In other words, by saying that we should say it in English, in French, in Russian, in Spanish, whatever language, means that even people who don't speak Hebrew, not only the language, means they're not really connected to Torah, to mitzvahs, but when you speak in their language and you say we want Mashiach now, even they would understand, and they should also become inspired to ask for Mashiach. Now, one of the questions that were asked in that first page where people questioned the words Ad Masai, and people said, there were articles I remember written that they sort of criticized it's not respectful language when you say to Hashem Ad Masai. Till when? It's like saying to Hashem, how long are you going to keep this up? You know, as if you're complaining to him, or you're demanding. And that kind of language seems to be too aggressive, and a language which is disrespectful. So to answer that question, you look at page number 5. On top of the page, I'm sorry I don't have this in English. Yes.
Al Masai say Al Matai.
Yeah.
אבל לא עם דרך ארץ.
That's the question. People say, זה כאילו לא עם דרך ארץ. זה כאילו אני צועק על הקדוש ברוך עד מתי. So therefore, look at page 5. On top of the page, it says Tikkun Chatzos. Anyone know what Tikkun Chatzos is? No. Tikkun Chatzos, you can find it in the Siddur. You'll also find it in the Chabad Siddur, in the back. But it's something that today, very few people maybe do that. But years ago, it was more common practice. Chatzos means midnight, which means the custom was people would get up after midnight, after 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they would sit down on the floor like on Tisha B'Av, and they would say certain prayers where they're mourning the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. But that means that they didn't sleep too many hours. And today we're not on that level. We're weaker. We can't do it. So today it's pretty much not done by most people. But even today, you can find individuals, certain selected people that still do it. This page is a copy of that prayer at Masai. Look how it goes. It's all in Hebrew, but it's all about the Golos. But look how each part starts. Ad Masai once, Ad Masai a second time, Ad Masai a third time, Ad Masai a fourth time, Ad Masai, Ad Masai, Ad Masai, Ad Masai, Ad Masai. Who wrote it? It has to be written by the early sages that they wrote all the prayers. So therefore, and not only that, you have it in Tillim also. You know who wrote Tillim? Yeah, David Malach. He's a pretty reliable person. Take for example, I know it's in a few places, but one place is easy to remember. Chapter Ayin Dalet, 72, 74. You'll see it says in the middle, Ad Masai. So clearly the language Ad Masai is not a homemade language. It's from the Torah. It's from the prayers that we have and from the Tillim. And it's not a language which is, God forbid, disrespectful. It's a language that we're saying it with pain and with anguish, and we're begging Hashem, please bring Mashiach. And not only Hashem is not offended by it, on the contrary, this gives Hashem the greatest pleasure to know that we're saying, Hashem, we can't be without you. Please reveal yourself. And I want to add something that's not here. Well, this is basically, the Rebbe also explained another point. It means we're saying that to a certain extent, the world is ready for Mashiach, and Hashem is waiting for us to ask for it. Where do we find the precedent for this? So there's two places in the Chumash, in the Torah, where there's a precedent for this. What are the two places? One is a story about Pesach Sheni. The story is in the Chumash, and that is that when the Yidden built the Mishkan, it was the first day of Pesach, the first day of Nisan. They built the Mishkan, and Hashem's presence came down. It was the biggest joy and celebration. And then suddenly there was something very tragic that happened. The two sons of Aaron died, and that's a story in itself. Why did it happen? But naturally, they needed people to take the bodies and bury them. Once they buried the bodies, they became impure. A few days later, Hashem gave the mitzvah to do a Korban Pesach, to bring a Korban Pesach, which was a Paschal sacrifice. So these people couldn't do it because they were impure. And if you're impure, you can't bring a sacrifice in the Beis HaMikdash. So this is a story in the Chumash, Parshat Bahaloscha. And they came to Moshe and they said to Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not fair. Why should we be different than everybody else? The whole nation of Israel brought a sacrifice, and we are excluded. We're like different than the whole Jewish nation. We couldn't bring a sacrifice. By the way, that's one opinion. There's another opinion that Ba'alotcha. It's in Chumash Bamidbar. There's another opinion that it wasn't these people, but when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, Yosef requested that they should carry his body with them and bury him in Shechem. That's where he's buried. So the people who were carrying his body, they became impure. And they're the ones who came and said, we couldn't bring the sacrifice. So Moshe said, you have a good argument. Let me ask Hashem what I should do. So Hashem said, yes. A month later, on the same exact day of the month, the 14th of the month, they should bring the sacrifice, eat the matzah, which means this is what we call Pesach Sheni, a second Pesach. And in fact, this became a new mitzvah, that any person who couldn't bring the korban on Pesach because they were impure, or because they were traveling and they were so far away they couldn't get on time to the Beis HaMikdash, they have a second chance. And the second chance is the 15th day, the 14th day and 15th day of Iyar. A month later, they can make up for it. So here's an interesting thing. This is one of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Hashem gave us 630 mitzvahs. Until this mitzvah was given, we only had 612. That means there was one mitzvah that was not given. They didn't create a new mitzvah. It was already there, but it wasn't given. Why wasn't it given? So it says because Hashem was waiting for them to ask for it. Once they asked for it, Hashem gave it. Why this mitzvah was Hashem waiting? We don't know. There is explanation to that. But we see from this the concept that sometimes there can be something which is already all set to go, but Hashem is waiting for us to ask. And once we ask, that's when we'll get it. Yes?
How long it take them to become pure again?
Generally, it's 7 days. Of course, impurity from a dead body, and before they can do the process of purifying him, had to take more days. So therefore, they weren't ready by Pesach time. So that's one story. The other story is we call the story of Bnei Tzlavcha, the daughters of Tzlavcha. There was a man whose name was Tzlavcha, and he died in the desert. And the Yidden were given the laws of inheritance, that the son inherits the father. And when they go into Israel, whatever piece of land belongs to the father, if he passes away, it goes to the son. So these were 5 daughters, and it says they were actually all tzaddikas, they were all righteous women. And they came and they said, it's not fair. We don't have any brothers, and our father has land in Israel. We want to inherit his land. Why shouldn't we inherit his land? And which the Gemara says because they wanted it, not because they wanted the money, but because of their love for Eretz Yisrael. They wanted to have a portion in the land. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, you have a good argument, let me ask Hashem. And there was a parsha in the Torah that writes how, yes, women should also have a share in the inheritance of their father, inheriting the land. And Rashi says, again, the same thing, an incredible thing. This parsha was already written, prepared in Hashem, in Shamayim, but he didn't give it down here. And he waited for them to ask for it. And once they asked for it, Hashem gave it. So it's again another example. And in fact, Rashi says, they were great righteous women, and they knew and they felt that really, according to Torah, they're deserving to have it. But again, not only did it help them, from that point on, all women, all future generations now have this. So we see that there's sometimes that Hashem says, I have something for you. It's all here, it's waiting, but I need you to ask. And once you ask, that's when I give it. In fact, to a certain extent, that's what davening is all about. People ask, why do I have to daven? Hashem knows what I need. If he wants to give it to me, he'll give it to me. And if he doesn't want to give it to me, so if I'm going to cry, he's going to say, okay, you can have it. What's the point in davening? So obviously the answer is that Hashem knows that I deserve this and I'm supposed to get this, but there's a reason why Hashem wants me to get it through davening. Now I'll explain it briefly. I think maybe one of our classes earlier in the year about davening, I explained it, but these are the kind of things you have to repeat it every 2 months so that you can remember it better. But the explanation is, if Hashem prepared for me that I should have parnasa, I should have my sustenance. So I say, I'm not going to go to work. Why should I waste my time going to work? If Hashem already ruled that this year I'm going to make $90,000, then it's going to happen. How? Let Hashem figure it out. He knows. What's wrong with it? Not because I'm lazy, because I want for good other things. I learn Torah. Do I have to actually go to work? Do I have to go on a job interview and all that uncomfortable things? I'll just sit home and I'll say Tehillim, and money is going to come from someplace, here, there. We'll just open up a drawer. Wow, I don't believe it. Here's all the money I need. The answer is because according to Torah, Hashem wants things to happen in a certain order. And the order is the order of nature. So I have to do something in the order of nature. And in that way, I create a vessel, a keli, and then Hashem gives me my parnasa. So if a person is not feeling well, and they don't go to the doctor, they can also say, listen, if Hashem wants me to be well, I don't need a doctor. If he doesn't want me to be well, chas v'shalom, the doctor won't help. So what's the point in going to a doctor? The answer is no, Hashem wants me to be well, and he wants me to be healed, but I should go through the order of nature. Order of nature is go to a doctor, he gives you a medicine, And that's how Hashem sends his bracha that I should be well. And over there, Hashem sends his bracha that I should have food. So the same thing is spiritually. Just like there are certain channels in the physical realm, how Hashem gives it to me, there's also channels spiritually, how Hashem gives it to me. And that channel is tefillah, is davening. And one of the reasons why davening is the right channel, because what does davening mean? When a person davens, they're basically saying, Hashem, I believe that you are the source of all blessing. And you're the one that gives me what I need. And therefore, I'm asking you, Hashem, to give it to me. The mere fact that I'm declaring my faith and trust in Hashem and recognition that it's He who is the source of the blessing, nobody else and nothing else, that makes me more worthy and more of a vessel to receive His bracha. You follow this? In other words, the davening is my way of expressing that I know, I'm telling Hashem, I know that it's all from you. Because if a person feels that it's not Hashem, it's my boss at work, it's my landlord who owns my apartment, it's this other person, they could make me happy or unhappy. If I don't realize that it's all from Hashem, that in itself blocks the bracha. So the way to open up to receive Hashem's bracha is by recognizing that the bracha comes from Hashem. There's a story told about a certain chassid that whenever his Rebbe came to visit that town, where would he stay? He had to stay in somebody's house. Apparently, this chassid had a good accommodations, so the Rebbe would stay in his house. Whenever he traveled and he came to that city, that's where he stayed. One time, the Rebbe came to that city, but instead of staying in his house, he stayed in someone else's house. He was getting all ready, and he was in shock. How could that be? He went to the Rebbe's secretary. He says, "What did you do? You must have made a mistake. Why did you take the Rebbe to that house? He always comes to my house." No, we didn't make a mistake. The Rebbe told us explicitly not to go to your house. Now he was really in shock. He told you not to go to my house? Why? We don't know. So could I go into his room and ask him? No. Why not? He gave orders that you can't go into his room. What? Now he was really getting worried. Not to go to my house. I can't speak to him. I can't see him. Why? We don't know. Anyway, he was trying to think, what happened? Did he do something wrong? Did he say something wrong? What could have caused such a reaction from his Rebbe? And he tried again and again and again. Finally, he got a message that don't even think of coming to me without bringing with you 2,000 ruble. 2,000 ruble was an enormous amount of money. Only wealthy people could have such amounts of money. And how in the world is he going to get it? But he decided if the Rebbe is putting that as a condition, there's no choice. He's going to have to do work overtime, who knows what, till he'll get this money. It could take a year, it could take more. But there's nothing in the world that's more important to him that the Rebbe should allow him to come in. And he looked at there must be some sort of a punishment for something he did. And he was breaking his head. He could not remember and think what this is all about. That night, a group of soldiers knocked on the door. And the law in Russia at the time was that if soldiers are in your town and they need accommodations, you must let them into your house. So he had to let them into his house. And he had no choice. He had to give them room, let them sleep. In the middle of the night, there was a call, and all the soldiers ran out of all their homes, and they ran somewhere. Obviously, there was some urgent situation on the battlefront, and they had to get there sooner. And the next morning, he found a bag, and in the bag, there were thousands of gold coins. Apparently, one of the soldiers was carrying it with him. And obviously, he went to Rav, because once these soldiers are out to war, there's no more connection to them, and they have no more connection to you. And again, I don't know the details, but the Rav said that this is a lost object, and he's allowed to take it, allowed to keep it to himself. Whatever reason it was. Obviously, it probably was a situation where they knew that he'll never have any connection to this person, and he'll never have any connection to him. So the first thing that came to his mind was, he wasn't thinking about building a mansion, about investing in a business. What do you think his first thought was? Wow, I have 2,000 ruble here, and now I can go see the Rebbe. Miracle. He had much more than 2,000. So he took the money with a broken heart. It was like shaking. What was it that he did? He doesn't remember. He comes into the Rebbe's room. The Rebbe has a broad smile on his face. And of course, he breaks down and says, Rebbe, what did I do? He said, you didn't do anything. So what was this all about? So he said, I saw in Shamayim that you are given a bracha to become very wealthy. But I knew that you will never pray for wealth. You'll pray for health. You'll pray for money so that you have food and clothing for your children and for your family. But you're not going to pray to be a wealthy person. It's not something that you think about, you care about. I had to find a way to make you pray for wealth. Naturally, when he saw that he needs 2,000 rubles, he started to pray for a lot of money. Once you prayed for wealth, now the bracha came and you got the bracha. Which means that for Shamayim, there could be a lot of brachas waiting for us, and that's why we have the davening. In the davening, it includes all the brachas that a person possibly need. So when we daven, we're actually creating those channels for all of Hashem's brachas. So, what? Yeah, but not for wealth. Wealth is something extra. We don't, in davening, we ask, there's parnasa means I should have food for rent, for clothing, for food, for myself, for my children, but it doesn't mean to be wealthy. Yeah, extra wealth is extra headache. That's a whole new story, you know. Even though a lot of people want that headache until they get it. Once they get it, they're not, and that always is the greatest thing. What? Okay. Don't forget about Mechon Liyadus when we get the headache. Okay. Okay, so the same is here. Regarding this subject, what do we know? But the Rebbe informed us that now, after everything Yidden did, after everything we went through, all the generations of Mesirat Nefesh, for Torah, for mitzvahs, for Yiddishkeit, we are now deserving of Mashiach, and now Hashem wants us to ask for Mashiach. And if enough Yidden ask for Mashiach, we open that channel, and that makes things happen. Another few examples to this is let's look at page 7. No, page 7, but the last thing where there's a check next to it. In 2 weeks, we're going to be doing Parshas Vayechi. That's the last Parsha in 3 weeks, the Parsha in Bereshis. So it says like this, the opening verse in Parshas Vayechi tells Yaakov Avinu, this is before Yaakov was passing, he asked his son Yosef and said, please do not bury me in Egypt, carry me out of Egypt, and swear to me that you'll carry me out of Egypt. This teaches us, page 8, that a Jew should unceasingly cry out to Hashem with the request, carry me out of Egypt. It may be said of him, in as much as he studies Torah, observes mitzvahs, but Golus is not the environment where he belongs. And for this reason, he begs of Hashem, and he's also taking out like an oath and saying, Hashem, carry me out of Egypt, because we have a desire, I want to leave this Golus. You know, some people are actually afraid of Mashiach. You know that? Mashiach is going to come. What's going to happen? I have a huge mansion. I have a big, piece of land. I have a lake near my house. It's beautiful. Where am I going to go? To Israel? I don't know if I have so much space there. What's going to be with my job? What's going to be with all the work everything that I have here? So people are afraid. And therefore we need a little bit of encouragement. We shouldn't be afraid. On the contrary, we should be begging Hashem to go out of Mitzrayim. Because, well, it's another discussion, but we'll learn later how nobody will, God forbid, lose by going out of Golus. If anything, whatever we have will be even better then than it is now. Let's look at another one on page 8. when the Yidden talk about Mitzrayim, it says the Israelites groaned on account of their labors, which means they were crying out and saying that they're suffering so much, and their crying came up to Hashem. And after that, Hashem said, let me take them out of Mitzrayim. This means that Yidden should cry out to Hashem because of this long exile and beg him to take them out. They should argue that they've already completed their tasks. Like it says, the Yidden groaned on account of their labor, which means Hashem, we worked so hard. And when Jews cry out to Hashem over the length of the Golus, this will no doubt arouse divine reaction. Like it says in the Chumash, Hashem took note, and he will send them the righteous Mashiach. Okay, let me do one more thing before we finish here. This is just sources, just to see that in the Torah it says that Hashem wants us to ask him for redemption. Contrary to the opinion that no, Hashem will know what to do, he'll know the right time. But, the answer is also like everything else. If somebody's sick and you daven to Hashem, please make the person well right now. He should leave the hospital this moment. You're not going to say that's a chutzpah. Hashem knows what he's doing. Just have patience when the right time comes. That's not the way we daven. And not because we're going against Hashem, because Hashem wants us to daven and to ask. And that's the way we feel about Golus. It's one big hospital, Golus. One big jail, whichever one you want to look at it. The last one on the page, thirsting for dear life. King David writes in Tehillim, this is chapter 42 in Tehillim, like a deer pants after the water brook. In other words, just like a deer is craving to drink the water, my soul thirsts for Hashem. In those words, David HaMelech speaks for every single Jew. He is called the sweet singer of Israel. He expresses the Jewish people's anguish over the Golus and their yearning for redemption. We want Mashiach now. Is not only something that they want, it is something for which their soul thirsts. It's like the intense thirst of a man who is desperate for water to save his life. For the redemption is something on which one's very life depends. So these are the words of the Tehillim. There are a lot of places in Tehillim where you can see David HaMelech, even though it was during the time which wasn't Golus, but a lot of the chapters of Tehillim were written for the future. And it contains in it blessings about the future. And therefore, David HaMelech is saying that when a Yid says, Hashem, I'm thirsty for you, what does that mean? I'm thirsty, just like this person is thirsty for water. I want your presence to be revealed. And that's the essence of Mashiach. But again, we had a class before where we spoke about what if a person said, I want Mashiach because I want my grandmother to be well. I want Mashiach because people in my family are suffering from poverty, or because there are hostages. I want Mashiach that the hostages should go out. Someone would say, oh, so that's not the right reason you should want Mashiach. So we explained, no, that's not true. We have to want Mashiach. And if we want Mashiach because we want these physical things to change and to be improved, that's also a positive thing. Because ultimately, what we're really saying is if Hashem's presence is revealed, then there'll be only good in the world and only revealed good. And that's what we're asking for. Okay, to be continued. Yeah. You're very welcome.